Reading passage 3, you should spend about 20 minutes on questions 27 to 40, which are based on reading passage 3 below. Book review, the happiness industry, how the government and big business sold us well-being by William Davis. Happiness is the ultimate goal because it is self-evidently good. If we are asked why happiness matters, we can give no further external reason. It just obviously does matter. This pronouncement by Richard Layard, an economist and advocate of positive psychology, summarizes the beliefs of many people today. For Layard and others like him, it is obvious that the purpose of government is to promote a state of collective well-being. The only question is how to achieve it, and here positive psychology, a supposed science that not only identifies what makes the people happy, but also allows their happiness to be measured, can show the way. Equipped with this science, they say, government can secure happiness in society in a way that never could in the past. It is an astonishingly crude and simple-minded way of thinking, and for that very reason, increasingly popular. Those who think in this way are oblivious to the vast philosophical literature in which the meaning and value of happiness have been explored and questioned, and write as if nothing of any importance had been thought on this subject until it came to their attention. It was the philosopher Jeremy Bentham, 1748 to 1832, who was more than anyone else responsible for the development of this way of thinking. For Bentham, it was obvious that the human good consists of pleasure and the absence of pain. The Greek philosopher Aristotle may have identified happiness with self realization in the 14th century BC, and the thinkers throughout the age may have struggled to recognize the pursuit of happiness with other human values, but for Bentham, all this was mere metaphysics or fiction. Without knowing anything much of him or the school of moral theory he established, since they are, by education and intellectual conviction, illiterate in the history of ideas, our advocates of positive psychology follow in his tracks in rejecting as outmoded and irrelevant pretty much the entirety of ethical reflection on human happiness to date. But as William Davis notes in his recent book, The Happiness Industry, the view that happiness is the only self evident good is actually a way of limiting moral inquiry. One of the virtues of this rich, lucid, and arresting book is that it places the current cult of happiness in a well defined historical framework. Rightly, Davis begins his story with Bentham Noticing that he was far more than a philosopher, Davis writes, Ransom's activities were those which we might now associate with a public sector management consultant. In the 1790s, he wrote to the Home Office suggesting that the departments of government be linked together through a set of conservation tubes, and to the Bank of England with a design for a printing device that could produce un- unforgettable banknotes. He drew plans for a frigidarium to keep provisions such as meat, fish, fruit, and vegetables fresh. His celebrated design was prison to be known as the panopticon, panopticon in which prisoners would be kept in solitary confinement while being visible at all times to the guards, was very nearly adopted. Surprisingly, Davis does not discuss the fact that Bentham meant his panopticon not just as a model prison, but also as an instrument of control that could be applied to schools and factories. Bentham was also a pioneer of the science of happiness. If happiness is to be regarded as a science, it has to be measured, and Bentham suggested two ways in which this might be done, viewing happiness as a complex of pleasurable sensations. He suggested that it might be quantified by measuring the human pulse rate. Alternately, money could be used as the standard for quantification. If so different, if two different goods have the same price, it can be claimed that they produce the same quantity of pleasure in the customer. Bentham was more attracted by the latter measure, but associating money so closely to inner experience, Davis writes, Bentham set the stage for the entangling of psychological research and capitalism that would shape the business practices of the 20th century. The happiness industry describes how the object of a science of happiness has become integral to capitalism. We learn we learned much that is interesting about how economic problems are being redefined and treated as psychological materials. In addition, Davis shows how the belief that inner states of pleasure and displeasure can be objectively measured has informed management studies and advertising. The tendency of thinkers such as J.B. Watson, the founder of founder of behaviorism, was that human beings could be shaped or manipulated by policymakers and managers. Watson had no factual basis for his view of human action. When he became president of the American Psychological Association in 1915, he had never even studied a single human being. His research had been confined to experiments on white rats. Yet, reductive model is now widely applied with behavior change becoming the goal of governments. In Britain, a behavior insights team has been established by the government to study how people can be encouraged at a minimum cost of the public purse to live in what are considered to be socially desirable ways. Modern industrial societies appear to need the possibility of ever increasing happiness to motivate them in their labors, but whatever its intellectual pedigree, the idea that governments should be responsible for promoting happiness is always a threat to human freedom.